I work nights at a distribution warehouse on the edge of an industrial zone outside Toledo, Ohio. My name is Evan. I'm 31, and my job is inventory control, counting what comes in, what goes out, fixing the smatches in the system, and babysitting scanners that always decide to die at 3 a.m. I'm not paranoid by nature. I'm the kind of person who assumes there's a normal explanation first, even when something feels off. That's why, when the security camera clip loaded as a black screen at 1844, I watched it twice, because the audio was perfect. I could hear someone walking inside our warehouse. Slow footsteps. A pause. Then our motion-activated side door chime, from the inside. And then a voice, very close to the camera microphone, whispering, "Clock in, Evan." At 1851, I pulled into the employee lot. It was February, wet and ugly, with wind that pushed drizzle sideways and made every light on the property look smeared. Our building sat behind chain-link fencing with 2 gates, one for trailers, one for employees. The warehouse itself was a long rectangle of metal siding and bright sodium lights, with loading docks along the east wall and a smaller, people door, near the corner, door 3. I parked, pulled my badge from my wallet, and checked the security app again. The clip that had been black was still black. But the audio didn't change. Footsteps. Chime. And that whisper. It didn't sound like a radio. It didn't sound like a phone speaker. It sounded like someone leaning toward a microphone. I told myself it was an audio glitch. Or a prank. Or the system pairing the wrong audio with the wrong camera. Then I looked at the timestamp again, 18 hours 44 minutes and 3 seconds. I hadn't been on site. No one I knew would be on site that early, either. Our day shift cleared out by 4 p.m. Night shift didn't start until 7. At 19:06, I walked in through the employee gate. The guard shack was staffed by one guy, Manny, who mostly watched sports on his phone and waved people through. He nodded at me. "Evenin'," he said. "Evenin'," I replied. Normal. The building smelled like cardboard, pallet wood, and that clean chemical smell from the floor scrubbers. Normal. I swiped my badge at the interior door. The reader beeped green. Normal. But the moment I stepped into the main aisle, I noticed a small detail that didn't fit. One of the overhead lights in Zone C was on. Zone C was supposed to be dark until shift start. It was a motion sensor section to save electricity, and it only lit up when someone walked through. A single lane of light glowed in the distance like a path. I stood still and listened. The warehouse hum was steady, fans, compressors, far-off refrigeration. No forklifts. No voices. No echo of boots. Just that one lit aisle. I walked toward it slowly, telling myself a mouse could trigger a sensor. Or a hanging strap could sway. Or Manny could have walked through earlier. Then, as I got closer, the light clicked off. Not gradually. Instantly, like someone had stepped out of range. That was the first small hook of the night, the building behaving like it knew when I was looking. At 19:18, I clocked in and went straight to the small security office near receiving. We had a monitor wall there, not fancy, but enough to see door 3, the loading docks, the break room hall, and the yard. I wasn't a security guy, but I had access because inventory problems sometimes required checking footage. I pulled up camera 3, the one that had sent the black clip. The live feed showed door 3 from inside, gray door, push bar, yellow safety lines on the floor. Empty. Perfectly normal. I clicked. Events. And there it was again, the motion event at 1844. I hit play. Black screen. Clear audio. Footsteps. Chime. Whisper. "Clock in, Evan." I turned the volume down like that would make it less real. My throat went dry anyway. I took a screenshot of the event log. Then another, with the timestamp visible. Because even when my brain wanted to call it a glitch, my hands were already doing what they do when something doesn't add up. Document it. At 1932, my supervisor, Rita, walked in with a coffee and a tired face. "You good?" she asked. I hesitated. I didn't want to sound dramatic. So I went with the simplest truth. "Did someone come in early?" I asked. Rita frowned. "Not that I know." I showed her the black clip. She watched it without speaking. When the whisper happened, her expression tightened, but she didn't jump. She just stared at the screen like she was trying to see through it. "That's weird," she said finally. "Glitch?" I offered. "Maybe," she said too quickly. "Send it to IT tomorrow." Then she looked at me and added, "Don't go wandering around alone, okay?" That was one of the few lines of dialogue that stuck, because it wasn't a joke. At 20:07, the first escalation hit. My phone buzzed with a notification from the access control system. We had an app that logged badge swipes for certain doors, not every interior door, but the gates and high-value rooms. The notification read, "Trailer Gate, access granted, badge, E1187, 20 hours 6 minutes and 51 seconds. That was my badge ID. I stared at it. Then I looked down at my badge. It was in my hand. I hadn't moved from the security office in 10 minutes. I pulled up the full log. It showed my badge used at the trailer gate, on the far side of the yard. I snapped another screenshot. Rita was already walking away down the hall. I called out softly, "Rita." She turned. I held the phone up. She read it. For a second, her face went blank, like the warehouse had stopped being work and turned into something else. "You didn't?" she started. "No," I said. She exhaled once through her nose, sharp. "Stay in here," she said. "I'm calling Manny." That was escalation number 1, my badge being used somewhere I wasn't, recorded by the system. At 2014, Rita came back. "Manny says no one came through the trailer gate," she said. "But the log," I began. "I know," she cut in, then softened her voice. "Could be a read error." But she didn't look like she believed it. At 2028, escalation number 2 happened. The warehouse radio crackled. We used cheap handhelds for forklift traffic and dock coordination. The channel was usually full of short, boring phrases. "Dock 7 ready. Need wrap and B." But this time, my radio lit up without a call sign. And Rita's voice came through. Not similar. Not kind of like. It was her voice, same cadence, same tired edge. "Evan," it said, "come to door 3. There's a delivery." I looked up at Rita. She was standing 2 feet from me. Her radio was clipped to her vest. She hadn't touched it. Her mouth wasn't moving. Rita's eyes snapped to mine. "Did you?" she whispered. Then the radio repeated, in her voice again. "Door 3. Now." Rita grabbed her radio and pressed the button. "This is Rita," she said, steady but tight. "Who's transmitting on my channel?" Silence. Then a soft, breathy chuckle, like someone amused, came through the speaker. And the channel went dead. Rita stared at the radio like it had betrayed her. I didn't say anything, because the only honest thing I could have said was, "That was you, but it wasn't you." At 2036, Rita called the security company. Not 911, our contracted security line. She put it on speaker. A bored voice answered, asked for our site code, said they'd check the system. As if systems were the only thing that could be wrong. The building felt colder after that. Not in temperature. in how empty it suddenly seemed. At 21:03, escalation number 3 arrived in a form that made my stomach drop harder than any voice. A printed sheet appeared on the security office desk. I know how that sounds. I'm not saying it materialized out of thin air. I'm saying it wasn't there 5 minutes earlier. Rita and I had been standing in that office. No one came in. The door hadn't opened. But there it was, sitting neatly beside my keyboard like a note. It was a shipping manifest. 1 page. And at the top, in the handled by field, was my name. Evan M. Below it was a list of pallet IDs. And 1 line typed in the comment section. Clock in. Door 3. No logo. No company letterhead. Just a plain, clean print. The kind you get from an office printer. Except our printers were in the admin hallway, behind a badged door. I picked up the paper carefully, like it could smear. The ink was dry. Fresh. Rita didn't touch it. She just stared. Put it in a folder, she said quietly. Don't lose it. That was our proof object. Not because paper is magical, but because it meant someone had access to our internal forms and knew how to use them. At 21:21, Rita made a decision. Lock door 3, she said. Door 3 was usually kept accessible for vendors with scheduled drops. But we could disable it remotely in the access system. She did. The status switched on screen from active to locked. Then, for a few minutes, nothing happened. And those were the worst minutes. Because the warehouse went so quiet that every fan sounded like breathing. At 22:09, the door 3 chime rang. Once. Inside the building. We both turned to the monitor. Door 3's live feed showed nothing. No movement. No shadow. No door opening. But the chime sounded again, louder this time, and our monitor logged it as Door 3, open event, 22 hours 9 minutes and 44 seconds. Rita leaned forward. It's locked, she whispered. The log didn't care. The screen showed the door closed. But the system insisted it opened. Then the camera feed stuttered. 1 frame froze with a blurred shape near the bottom edge, like a boot toe. Then the feed snapped back to normal. Rita looked at me like she wanted me to say, glitch. I couldn't. Because the chime wasn't a glitch. You don't imagine sound that precise. At 22:18, my badge log updated again. Door 3, access granted, badge, 1187, 22 hours 18 minutes and 2 seconds. My badge. Again. This time, on the door we had just locked. Rita's voice got very calm, the way people sound right before they do something they can't take back. We're calling police, she said. I nodded. Then the radio crackled one more time. Rita's voice again, closer, like someone speaking directly into our office. Don't. Rita's hand froze above her phone. The office lights flickered once. Just once. Then steadied. The building didn't lose power. It was more like a wink. At 22:23, I made my irreversible choice. Point of no return. I said, I'm going to door 3. Rita snapped her head toward me. No, she said. Absolutely not. I need to see if someone's inside, I said, and I hated how it sounded like responsibility. The truth was simpler. My brain wanted certainty so badly it was willing to risk it. Rita grabbed my sleeve. Evan, she said low, this is not your job. I looked at the manifest on the desk. At the access logs on my phone. At the black clip that whispered my name. And I said the dumbest thing calm people always say. I'll be careful. At 22:26, I walked out into the warehouse aisle with a flashlight and my radio clipped to my vest. The air smelled like cardboard and cold concrete. The motion lights above me clicked on as I moved. Behind me, the security office door locked. Rita had locked it. For her safety, and to stop me from coming back too easily. Zone C was dark until I entered it. Then the lights snapped on in a straight line ahead of me, like the building was showing me a path. I kept my flashlight low. I kept my steps slow. I listened for breathing, shifting weight, the squeak of a shoe. Nothing. At 22:31 I reached door 3. From the inside, it looked perfectly normal. Push bar. Steel plate. Rubber seal. No movement under it. No shadow. The camera above it stared down like a dead eye. I turned my flashlight up and looked directly at the lens. There was a smear across it. A thin, oily streak like someone had touched it with a glove. I hadn't noticed it on the monitor. Up close, it was obvious. Then my radio crackled softly. No voice. Just the faint sound of a chime. The door 3 chime. Through my radio speaker. Then a whisper, barely audible. Open it! I didn't. My hand hovered near the push bar anyway. My body felt split, half trying to be brave, half trying to run. Then, very gently, the push bar on the other side moved. Not slammed. Not forced. Pressed. Like someone testing it, feeling the resistance. The door did not open. But the pressure was real. I stepped back 1 pace. My flashlight beam shook. A second later, something slid under the door. A small plastic rectangle. It came to rest at my boot. An employee badge. My employee badge. Same photo. Same name. Same ID. Only the edges were scuffed, like it had been used. I stared at it for a full 2 seconds before my brain caught up. My real badge was clipped to my vest. I touched it. Still there. I bent down, picked the badge from the floor with 2 fingers, and turned it over. On the back, where ours have a blank white strip, someone had written in thick marker. E1187. My badge ID. A clone. That was the undeniable proof moment. Not a feeling. Not audio. Not a maybe. A physical object. At 22:36 I ran. Not dramatically. Not screaming. Just fast, back down the aisle toward the security office like my legs had decided for me. I didn't look behind me. I heard the door 3 chime ring once, louder than it should have been. Then the warehouse radio lit up again. Rita's voice, clear and calm. He's running! I almost tripped. Because Rita wasn't on the radio. Rita was behind a locked door waiting for me. At 22:39, I slammed into the security office. Rita yanked the door open a crack and pulled me inside, then locked it again. What happened? She demanded. I held up the clone badge. Rita stared at it like it was a live insect. Okay, she said, voice shaking now. Okay. That's enough. She called 911. She didn't use the security company line. She didn't worry about looking foolish. She said, Someone is inside our warehouse. They cloned an employee badge. We have proof. At 23:04, police arrived. 2 cars. Blue lights cutting through drizzle on the yard pavement. Manny met them at the gate, confused and irritated, like he'd been forced to do his job. Officers walked the warehouse with flashlights. They checked door 3. They checked the trailer gate. They checked the admin hallway where the printers were. They didn't find anyone. No person hiding behind pallets. No figure in the shadows. But they found something that explained how the voice could happen without magic. In the rafters above Zone C, a small speaker had been zip-tied to a beam. Not a warehouse speaker. A portable one. Battery-powered. connected to a cheap transmitter. The officer held it up and said, "This can hijack your radio channel." Then he looked at the clone badge. "This is RFID," he said. "People copy these." He said it like he was explaining theft. And maybe it was. But theft wasn't the point. Because the point wasn't getting in. The point was getting in as me. At 23:27, we walked through the access logs with the officers. I showed them the screenshots. 20 hours 6 minutes and 51 seconds trailer gate, 22 hours 18 minutes and 2 seconds door 3. My badge ID used when I wasn't near those places. I showed them the black clip with the whisper. I showed them the printed manifest. They took photos. They bagged the clone badge. They promised extra patrols and told our company to upgrade the system. Then they left, because that's what happens in real life. Someone shows up, confirms something is wrong, and then the night still belongs to you. At 0:12, the warehouse was quiet again. Too quiet. Rita and I sat in the security office with the clone badge bagged, the manifest in a folder, and our phones charging like we were preparing for a second round. Rita finally spoke. "I'm sending you home," she said. "I can stay," I started. She cut me off. "No," she said. "Go." I didn't argue. At 0:41, I drove home through drizzle and empty streets, checking my mirrors like a habit I didn't remember learning. I slept maybe 2 hours. When I woke up, my phone had one new notification from an unknown email address. No subject. Just an attachment. A single image file. I didn't open it. I forwarded it to Rita and to IT. Then I deleted it. And still, the fear didn't delete with it. A week later, our company replaced the badge readers. We got new IDs. New numbers. New, secure system. Everyone acted like that fixed it. Then, a month after the night with Door 3, I found a small envelope in my mailbox. No return address. Inside was a plain white card. A new badge blank. No photo. No name. Just one thing printed on it in neat black letters. E1187. My old badge ID. And under it, in smaller font, like a reminder. Clock in. After this, I stopped staying late to finish one more thing. I leave when my shift ends because I learned the hard way that some people don't break into buildings for inventory. They break in to practice being you.